Welcome to Canada-India Education Forum, session number 1, organized by Canada-India-USA Development Forum, a Brampton, Ontario, Canada-based not-for-profit organization. Naga, if you can go to slide 2. No, 3, I mean 3 and 4. So Canada-India-USA Development Forum is an Ontario, Canada-based not-for-profit organization working to promote bilateral and trilateral relations between Canada, India, and USA. CIUDF, as the short form is, organizes events, conferences, and speaker series lectures with prominent corporate and political leaders in all 3 countries for an ideas exchange and knowledge sharing. The forum recently opened up for memberships, and 18 companies or professionals have joined as members in the last 3 months or so, with the goal to raise the membership to about 300 or more by December 31st next year. Hopefully, once we go back to live, meetings, it will pick up faster. So we also host virtual member meetings once a month, and once the pandemic measures are eased, we will host monthly brunch meetings, which has been on hold for quite a while for our members and sponsors. So I am the founder and president of this forum. Next slide, please. These are the activities that we regularly do. The Canada-India Insight Conference, which is an annual conference. India-USA Trilateral Conference, which is also once a year. Business leaders roundtables, political leaders roundtables, membership expansion, which I just mentioned, member networking events, currently virtual, and then hopefully soon in-person brunch meetings as well. The Consul General's roundtable, which we did the first one recently with Rana Sarkar Apoorva. Education forum, which is launching today. Health forum, which we launched last week on Saturday. And we had Mayor Patrick Brown, 2 Peel regional councillors, 2 city councillors, Chief Medical Officer of Health for Peel region, and others. We also have an e-publication, Canada-India Insight, and we host other webinars and virtual sessions on current affairs and issues of importance. So with that introduction out of the way, everyone now knows the significant role education is playing in Canada-India relations, as thousands of Indian students come to Canada every year, contributing hundreds of millions of dollars to Canadian educational institutions and to the Canadian economy, with many of them eventually becoming Canadian citizens and permanent residents. So we have got a stellar lineup of leaders from the Canadian educational institutions, as well as the president and CEO of ICICI Bank Canada, a bank that is helping Indian students before they leave India and also when they are here in Canada as well. So I must also thank the education committee members of the forum, Suchita Ahuja, Jatinder Banwait, Prashant Srivastava, and Nagasarath Pandurangi. Nagasarath is helping us with the tech support today. Thank you once again. While Prashant will be moderating today's session. So, Naga, if you can bring up Prashant's profile, please. Everybody knows Prashant Srivastava anyway. I mean, he is the director for South Asia for Seneca College, and also on our advisory board as well. So thank you for helping us out for moderating today's session. Over to you, Prashant bhai.
Thank you, Vipul bhai, for the introduction, and it is my privilege to moderate today's session. So before we start the session, I just want to express the condolences for the friends and family members of people who have passed away in this pandemic, and also salute our frontline workers for protecting us and taking good care of us. So I think it is important to recognize the contribution of frontline workers in this time of pandemic going around the world, and has been so decremental for the humanity. So once again, with this, I will start the panel today, and it is my privilege to introduce the keynote speaker of this session today, Mrs. Apoorva Srivastava. Mrs. Apoorva Srivastava is a career diplomat, having joined the Indian Foreign Service in 2001. Prior to being appointed as India's Consul General in Toronto, she worked with the Minister of External Affairs from January 2017 to August 2019. In her 19 years diplomatic career, she has served twice in the Indian Embassy in Paris from August 2003 to October 2006, and again from August 2012 to July 2015. And in the Indian Embassy in Kathmandu from June 2009 to August 2012. In the headquarters, she has served as Under Secretary SARC and as Director Administration. Consul General Ms. Srivastava holds a master's in psychology from Lucknow University. She speaks Hindi, English, and French. She is married to Anshuman Gaur, a career diplomat. They have 2 daughters. So once again, it's my privilege and honor to invite India's Consul General to Toronto, Mrs. Apoorva Srivastava, for the keynote remarks.
Thank you, Prashant. Namaskar and greetings to everyone. Let me begin by thanking Vipul Jani ji and Impact Media team for inviting me for this very important session on the business of education, role of international education in deepening Canada-India relations. As Vipul ji has already said, we have India and Canada strategic partners. Our partnership encompasses collaborations in wide range of fields. So, and education is among the most important ones. And among that, higher education sector is a key element of our partnership. In last 5 years, there has been a tremendous increase in flow of post-secondary students from India to Canada. Today, with around 230,000 students, India is the largest source of foreign students for Canadian universities, contributing around $7 billion in tuition fees alone. And most of these students will stay in Canada and contribute to the growth and development of the local economy. The presence of several researchers, scholars, and academics of Indian heritage in various universities and colleges across Canada is a testament to this fact. These students and professionals form new bridges of friendship for strengthening cooperation between our 2 countries, and they are the living bridges to strengthen the partnership of our 2 countries. Let me give you a brief, overview of the Deepening India-Canada Educational Partnership. Officially, we have a joint working group which had been set up under the MOU of higher education. 2 joint working group meetings have taken place. Last one in 2019. Apart from that, there's lots and more than 300 MOUs between institutions and higher learnings between India and Canada. Whichever university I visit and I interact with the faculties and the presidents, they always tell me that I have like 7, 8, more than 10 MOUs with different universities in India. So I'm sure the numbers would be more. There are 69 Canadian faculty members have already visited India under the Global Initiative of Academic Work Program for Teaching Assignment in Indian institutions. Of course, there's a Shastri Indo-Canadian Institute, which is a unique bi-national organization that fosters educational and cultural cooperation. It has been in existence for last 50 years and promotes academic partnership between more than 150 institutions in both our countries. IC Impacts, it's the India-Canada Center for Innovative Multidisciplinary Partnership. It's a research center of excellence. It's dedicated to development of research collaborations. I've been told that so far it has funded over 40 projects, which has yielded around 35 patents. So it is clear that the canvas of this bilateral cooperation is quite broad and not restricted just to business. Over the last few years, we have seen growing interest among Canadian universities to study and learn more about the different aspects of India, such as its history, philosophy, social and community system. We have seen India centers being established in some of the universities, and we also have this proposal of setting up chairs on Indian studies in some of the prominent Canadian universities shortly. The Indian Council for Cultural Relationship has this scheme of chairs where we send long-term and short-term chairs, and we have reached out to several universities to establish India-related chairs. And if any of the universities are interested, we'll be very happy to give them a draft MOU and the conditions which are attached to it. The ICCR normally pays for the salary and other things, and the local university has to pay for the residence, etc. So the objective of this chair is to create greater understanding between the two countries, and also about India and Indian civilization. So this is one area where we can collaborate in knowing more about India. Another is, we had this new education policy, which was launched by Government of India in July 2020. It brought sweeping reforms in schools and higher education structure in the country. Apart from this policy, apart from giving critical importance to digital learning process, it focuses on developing the foundational capacity of literacy and numeracy. But this new policy, the main impact of this on the bilateral relation is that this new policy allows foreign universities ranked within the top 100 of world universities to set up campuses in India. So this throws up a great opportunity for the top-ranking Canadian universities to collaborate with Indian universities in higher education and expand their footprints in India. While business is, of course, a part of overall collaboration in education, what is important to note is that Canada provides world-class education, and Indian students are taking advantage of this opportunity to study and upgrade their skills in new and emerging technologies. This helps in fostering groundbreaking research and innovation, as well as promotion of entrepreneurship and exchange of best practices. Some of the Canadian universities have already developed entrepreneurship program with Indian institutes of high learning, like several IITs, for strengthening this innovation ecosystems. University of Toronto has tied up with several IITs, Ryerson University, and others, Waterloo, Manitoba University, Winnipeg. They've already established strong cooperation with India. In January this year, York University, the Schulich School of Business, tied up with Startup India to conduct one of the largest entrepreneurship boot camp and venture competition initiatives in India-Canada Innovation Corridor. So any such things, this is another area of collaboration. Startup India is very keen to have great collaboration with academic institutions. So I'll be very happy to facilitate such collaborations if you or the university wants to do that. International education is essential pillar of Canada's competitiveness. So Indian students who study in Canada gain exposure to new ideas, which stimulate innovation and development of cross-cultural competencies. Even if they choose to settle down in Canada and contributes to Canada's economic success, they will still help in forging new partnerships for India. Since the inception of the pandemic, the consulate has been working with Canadian universities and colleges for ensuring welfare of Indian students, and also for providing the requisite assistance to the Indian students. I'm extremely happy to note that we received full cooperation from universities and colleges, and the timely assistance was provided to Indian students during these challenging times. The students were permitted to stay in campus, residences, and continued online courses, and general counseling was provided, which really greatly helped the students to cope up during these difficult times. In the end, I would like to say that the High Commission and our two consulate, one in Toronto and another in Vancouver, remains committed to exploring more avenues of cooperation in education and fostering of deeper linkages for expanding bilateral cooperation. Please feel free to approach us with any opportunities and any facilitation required in reaching out to Indian universities. Anything we can do to enhance research collaboration, student exchange, faculty exchange. So please reach out to us. We are always there and will definitely help out. Thank you for organizing this very timely and very important session today, and my best wishes for the for the deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you, Consul General Apoorva Srivastava, for your remarks. And definitely, it has been our experience of working with the consulate that the outreach has been excellent. Also, during the time of pandemic, for international students, the consulate in Toronto in particular became a home for international students. And the way you are leading and you are collaborating with all Indian associations, organizations is phenomenal. So once again, thank you very much for all your support to international students and also to international education sector. Thank you. So now I will, as per agenda, I will introduce our speaker, President David Agnew of Seneca College. And again, it is my privilege and honor to introduce President Agnew and also work under his guidance as well at Seneca. So President Agnew became Seneca's fifth president in 2009. Prior joining Seneca, he held leadership positions in public, private, and non-profit sector, including as secretary to the cabinet in the Ontario government. He was principal secretary to the premier, and he was also the president and CEO of UNICEF Canada, principal at Digital Foresight, executive vice president and corporate secretary for the Credit Union Central of Ontario, and ombudsman for banking services and investment. So he has worked in all the sectors, public, private, non-profit, brings extensive experience at Seneca. In 1995, he was seconded to the University of Toronto's Massey College as a senior resident. Mr. Agnew is chair of the Canadian Agency for Drugs and Technologies in Health. He also serves on numerous other boards and committees, including the Canadian Ditchley Foundation Advisory Board and Vice Chair of Polytechnics Canada. He is the past chair of Colleges Ontario and Sunnybrook Health Science Centre, former vice chair of the Education Quality Accountability Office, and is the founding member of Sinchon University's International Advisory Board. So it is my honor to invite President David Agnew for his remarks.
Well, thank you, Prashant, for that very generous introduction. The picture there reminds me that either I have to update my picture or I get a haircut soon, because I feel like our mayor. I missed my barber. Speaking of missing, among the many things I've missed in the last 14 months, Prashant, has been our trips to India. Now I only see you through the screen. I hope we can resume our visits soon. Let me also just say what an honor it is to follow the Consul General and to thank her not only for her unrelenting and wonderful support of our students, but also for today sharing her insights with us. And finally, Vipal, thank you for your tireless efforts to you illuminate, you investigate, but ultimately you strengthen the Canada-India relationship. So once again, you've assembled an outstanding panel, and I appreciate you including me. So let me, along with Prashant, express our sorrow, our solidarity with the people of India who are suffering through a very, of course, devastating time. I think all of us have had our experiences, personal, family, friends, with the pandemic. So we know that behind each of those case numbers, there's a real person, and it makes us very sad. Seneca's made a donation, a $5,000 donation through the Red Cross to help the fight against the pandemic in India. And it's good to see the numbers coming down again. And of course, we all hope for better times ahead. Well, let me share a few thoughts on the contribution of international education to strengthening the Canada-India relation, and in particular talk about the positive contributions of Indian students to our schools and the Canadian economy in general. As others have done, it's important to acknowledge the rapid increase in the number of Indian students coming to Canada. In fact, in 2020, India became the largest sending country, surpassing China for the first time. And in fact, that meant that more than 1/3 of all international students in Canada are now from India. That's a remarkable statistic. In fact, and Gary, this one is for you. In 2019, there were 139 study permits for Indian students approved by Canada. That's more students than the entire population of St. Catharines. So now, of course, the last year has been an extraordinary time, extraordinarily disruptive time for international education, for students and institutions alike. But I have to say, I'm very pleased to share with you that in our last semester, the January to April winter 2021 semester, we had nearly 5,500 international students from India at Seneca, and that's almost 1,000 more than the previous year. And if nothing else, that shows the determination of students and families in India to persevere through the amazing obstacles the pandemic has thrown up. They are persevering to secure a Canadian education. And of course, despite the pandemic, our basic kind of value proposition hasn't changed. Indian students, all international students, they come to Seneca for career and profession focused programs that get them ready for the job market, whether that's here or at home. And of course, their education takes place in a multinational, a multicultural environment, which is great preparation for the Canadian workforce and society. And of course, they can connect to Seneca alumni literally around the world. I will also say that our Indian students are amazingly and tremendously involved in the life of the campus, even in our hybrid mode. And they are disproportionately involved in a positive way in our mentoring programs, our clubs, and our student government. It's wonderful to see their engagement with campus life. But an important part of Seneca's approach to international education goes well beyond recruitment. It really picks up on the kind of collaborations that the Consul General was talking about with Indian universities and training partners. We're very fortunate to have built strong student-centered partnerships over the years, strong enough to withstand the challenges of the pandemic. And I just want to highlight a few. Through our relationship with INSCOL, which is one of the premier healthcare education organizations in India, thousands of Indian nurses have come to Seneca for programs in nursing, leadership and management, coronary care, nursing, chronic disease management, and many stay in Canada to qualify as registered nurses and contribute to the Canadian healthcare system. And in fact, many of these students stepped up during the pandemic and used their superb healthcare skills to help out in our troubled long-term care homes here in Ontario. We've trained close to 330 Indian civil servants and military personnel in areas such as cybersecurity and blockchain technologies through our partnership with the National Institute of Financial Management. Another public sector program we run is with the Institute of Secretariat Management, the training arm of the Government of India, and we were able to train our first batch just before the pandemic hit. With the academic institutions, we have a partnership with Thakur Institute of Management Studies and Research, or TIMSR, and we established a joint fintech center in Mumbai. And last summer, in fact, 20 students from TIMSR received certificates in various programs from Seneca. And finally, pre-pandemic, we established a strong relationship with Dalibag Education Institutions University in Agra. And before it became the fashion, we've been doing distance education and technology courses to students in India. So these are the kind of institution to institution relationships that help contribute to our stronger nation to nation ties. And they build that sense of mutual benefit of learning and growth that comes in healthy partnerships. But let me get back to the contribution of Indian students. We're fortunate to live in a country that understands the value and benefits of immigration. We're delighted to be doing our part to help Indian students hone their skills and talents at Seneca in our graduate degree and diploma programs, and then to join the Canadian workforce through the postgraduate work permit program. You know, I always say that I cannot think of a group better positioned to contribute to Canada over the long term than these young, well-educated people, these young, well-educated, Canadian-educated people who are eager to remain in Canada to forge a new career and create a new life. You know, the last year has been a test for all of us. The world has some time to go before we can safely put the pandemic behind us. But I am convinced, I'm totally convinced that the ties between Canada and India, whether it's between the people, the institutions, or our two great countries, will be stronger than ever on the other side. We have far too much to gain from each other for any other outcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David, for your kind remarks and also sharing your insights and your experience of with Indian students and also enlightening the panel and our audience about our partnership activities in India pre-COVID, during COVID, and I hope we will resume our activities and we will be able to meet again in person and visit India together. So looking forward to that day. So with this, I will like to invite Vipul Bhai. He has some comments to make.
Just one quick comment actually for Apoorva. Apoorva, I believe you are also participating at another webinar right now. You have got two going on at the same time. And I know you may not be here with us for the entire duration. So I just wanted to take this moment to thank you once again.
Thank you.
For accepting this invite, for finding time from the other webinar to come and give the keynote and always being there for us. I think the way, she always responds, the way she is always available. I think you never wear a watch, or I don't think you have a watch in your office. You are always there 24/7, we must absolutely thank you for the wonderful job that you are doing, for the wonderful support you are providing, not just to us, but to everybody. And I think everyone here at the panel, they will all attest to it. So thank you once again. Even during the trying times, for on a very short notice, you have joined us. That's all I just wanted to say.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, you are right. I have this another Canada-India Health Summit going on the other side. So I'll do back and forth. Thank you so much. I'll leave quietly.
Okay, Prashant, go ahead.
Thank you, Vipul Bhai, and thank you, Apoorva ji. Thank you. So I will now invite our Education Committee member, Suchit Ahuja, who is a professor at Concordia University, to introduce Gary Comerford.
Thank you, Prashant.
Naga, please, next slide. Brock hasn't come, so let's.
So yeah, Gary's slide, please. Yes, thank you. Thank you. So thank you. This has been a wonderful discussion so far, and I'm looking forward to more. So with that, I would like to introduce Gary Comerford, Chair of the Board of Trustees at Brock University at St. Catharines. Gary first entered the financial services business in 1977 as a branch manager for Canada Permanent Trust Company, TD Canada Trust now, and rose to become its vice president of marketing. In 1986, he joined Sun Life of Canada as vice president, marketing, and worked in a number of roles, including general manager for India, retiring as senior vice president international. In 2009, he joined Reinsurance Group of America as executive vice president and was later appointed executive vice president and chief marketing officer. In 2013, Gary became chairman and CEO of the Pacific Insurance Conference Limited, and in 2014 incorporated CMC Global, a consulting company specializing in international expansion. So Gary brings a lot of experience at top executive levels and is clearly established, globally as a leader. Bringing that experience to education really helps, I feel. So Gary is currently a director of Novelis and is a past director of Aditya Birla Minax, director of International Insurance Society, and a past director of the Birla Sun Life Insurance, Birla Sun Life Asset Management, and Birla Sun Life Distribution in India, and is a past president and CEO of the Canada-India Business Council, as well as a past member of the board of directors for TV Ontario. In 2014, he was appointed as a member of Brock University's Board of Trustees and serves on its executive committee. In 2017, he was appointed chair of the Board of Trustees at Brock. We welcome Gary, and we are very happy that you're able to join us and take time out of your busy schedule. Thank you, and over to you.
Sujit, thank you very much. It's interesting listening to your bio like that. And you kind of wonder, it brings back very fond memories, I must admit that. So thank you very much, Vipul, for the invitation here today, because it certainly gives one an opportunity to kind of step back and do a little thinking, particularly as I complete my fourth year and final year as chair of the board of Brock University. First of all, I want to pay my respects to the Consul General. My experience, over the last many decades, I've had a lot of interaction with the various Consul Generals. And that role is just so important to the dialogue that takes place between improving relations and business between Canada and India. So it was a pleasure to see the Consul General, make her remarks this morning. That was very much appreciated. It was also great to hear David talk about Seneca and about his view on kind of the way forward. If I may, I'd like to kind of step back and offer maybe some thoughts from, I would call it the 35,000 foot level. One of the lessons you learn as being chair of a board, which I've had the privilege of doing in a couple of institutions, that's very different than being president. When you're president, when I was, for example, CEO of Birla Sun Life Asset Management in India, I got people walked in my office, I got to make a decision, off they went and they implemented it most of the time. When you chair the board, it is often done by gentle persuasion, and the most important decision you make is the president that you choose to run the organization. So I want to step back and say, I think that one of the most important things that Canada needs to do is understand what its priorities are and where education falls into this priority. If I may go back just a few years ago, when I was president of the Canada Business Council for a short period of time, I asked Chrystia Freeland to speak at a summit that the CIBC put together. And she was just excellent. She was trade minister at the time. But I also felt it was my responsibility as president of the CIBC to kind of outline what we thought was important. And I remember that speech very well, because I stood up at the podium and we had a good crowd that day. That was back when we could do these things live. And I said that there were 3 priorities in the relationship between Canada and India that we should concentrate on. That we shouldn't try and be all things to all people, but we should concentrate on 3. And I said they were infrastructure. Our engineering, construction, and technical abilities in Canada are second to none. Our agriculture, which is the primary export today, and our agribusiness is so important in the relationship. And the third I said was education. And the reason I said education was for a whole bunch of reasons. And that was because of the importance of the relationship that education can cause as time goes on. Let me give you an example that in 1995, when I made my very first trip to India, and I was trying to establish businesses there for Sun Life with the Aditya Birla Group, I, of course, met a lot of individuals. And you can appreciate, I met a lot of civil servants and senior individuals within India. To my surprise, first of all, they were very familiar with Sun Life because we had been there for a long period of time. And while the nationalization had taken place, it really wasn't that long ago. But the other thing was the educational system of Canada. The number of people that said, oh, I sent my son to McGill. My daughter is attending U of T, all right? And that was surprising to me because I wasn't familiar with it. Now, of course, as David alluded to, there are more Indian students coming to Canada than is the population of St. Catharines. So all of a sudden, this has taken on a dramatic kind of undertaking. But it said to me that there's something going on here and there's something that's very important. And then one of the other lessons that I learned in business, trying to set up businesses, was don't try and fight the natural river. And people said, well, Gary, what's the natural river? The natural river is, what is the momentum and where is it going? And when you look at the relationship between Canada and India, common language, English language, believe me, having done business in China and in India on an extensive basis, it's a lot easier in India. Common law, we can have contracts, understanding. The simple fact of understanding our heritage, being part of the Commonwealth. Well, these may seem to be minor things. The reality is these are real tremendous advantages that we have, okay? So hopefully I've outlined that, in my view, the importance of education as a priority for not just our universities, but also, more importantly, for our federal and provincial governments. So that's the importance. So then I said, okay, what is the value added? Can Canada live up to the billing. I look at Australia and I look at the amount of students from India that are going there. It's a full-time industry, all right? Canada is becoming a full-time industry. But what do we offer? Well, you know, as I stand back, I think education has three broad buckets. And this is the simplistic, non-academic making this observation. The first one is your parents say, I want you to get a university education. So you go there and you may take philosophy, sociology, as I did, honors history. And in many respects, you learn how to learn. Canada has wonderful institutions to be able to help develop the character and the profile and the intellectual rigor of individuals. And that's important. But we also offer institutions such as Seneca, George Brown, Brock, others that have situations that are more practical. And what I mean more practical is, as David alluded to, immediate job skills, where people can take the education over a shorter period of time and learn. And as a result, that increases the breadth of opportunity in individuals that can come. And of course, the third, I would call the professional, whether it's your MBA, your nurses, your doctors, your teachers, you know, whatever it happens to be, we offer that well. So when I look at those three broad buckets and I say, does Canada do a good job on those? We do a really good job. Many years ago, a very good friend of mine, Donald Zeraldo, started the wine industry. Well, he's credited with started the wine industry in Canada. And he was also very much involved in something called the VQA, a Vintner's Quality Award. And what it did was it took Canada's lousy wines and it wouldn't give them certification. It would only give certification to the good wines. So as a consumer, I knew which were the good wines and which were just by the VQA. The Canadian educational institutions that I've had the pleasure of dealing with and visiting across Canada, we have an extremely high level of quality in our educational system. We need a VQA. We need certain standards nationally that our educational, and we advertise that way. And where I'm leading to is that when I go and I represent Brock University, when I go internationally, that's good. But what we need to do is sell Canada first. So in other words, the Senecas, the Westerns, the U of T's, the UBCs, these are all great institutions. We should all be going as the Canadian educational system, and then we take representation after we do that. What that would mean is that Canada needs an education strategy, a real one. And in order to have a real education strategy, that will give you that national strategy and the value added that can be certified. Then you say to yourself, what is the benefit for Canada? And to me, I think it's significant because three things happen to graduating students. One, they stay. We know through science, through research, that immigrants that stay in Canada work hard. They create businesses. They contribute to our country. We have 35 million people. We are not replicating ourselves. We need immigrants. There is a huge foundation being established now for Canada to have 50 to 100 million people. Okay? Why? We need immigrants. We need immigrants that are educated. We need immigrants that will stay. The other option is they may choose to return home. That's okay, because then they're going to be ambassadors for Canada. All right? Or the third option, it's a hybrid. They stay 5 years and then they go back. When I first set up Birla Sun Life in India, everybody wanted to go work in Toronto for Sun Life that I hired. When I retired, all right, the number that wanted to work and retire in Toronto was a small fraction. They saw more opportunity in India. So I guess I just want to conclude is that I truly believe that the educational sector is incredibly important. I think it's one of the most important. I think that Canada has a superior opportunity in education that we're not exploiting. We need national strategy. And the third is we should embrace these students, give them visas for life, give them the opportunity to establish themselves in Canada and make it easier. Take out the pain points. Don't create them. So again, that's 35,000 feet. But as you can tell, I'm passionate that I really do believe we need a national strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary, and thank you so much for your remark. And I remember working with you when you were the president of CIBC, and your ongoing advocacy to the international education sector, and also like deepening the relationship between Canada and India corridor. So means I wholeheartedly agree with you, and the way you have put all the 3 points are very pertinent for Canada and India to come closer. So once again, thank you so much for your remark. And now I will invite my colleague Nagasarath Pandurangi to invite our next speaker, Professor Govind Gopakumar of Concordia University.
Thank you so much, Prashant, and thanks everyone. It's an honor to be among the panelists. Such a great honor. So let me introduce Govind Gopakumar. Dr. Govind Gopakumar is Present Associate Professor and Chair of Center for Engineering and Society at Concordia University in Montreal. Govind's work is located in the intersection of interdisciplinary fields of scholarship and science and technology studies and urban environmental studies. His major research interest is to understand the challenges of sustainability of environmental infrastructures, such as the technological networks of water supply, sanitation, and mobility in cities. The current focus of his research is on understanding the underlying politics of the growing predominance of private automobiles around the world as a means of moving around in the cities and its implications of sustainable and inclusive cities. Govind received his doctoral degree in Science and Technology Studies from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, New York. In addition to being an associate professor, he also kindles his creative side of his brain by being a director. A heartily welcome to Govind Gopakumar.
Thank you, Nagasarath. Thank you so much for organizing this panel. Thank you especially to Vipul and to the CIUDF forum to invite me. I'm happy to participate in this panel. As the only academic on the panel, I'm hoping I can bring a perspective that's going to be slightly different from what's been said before. So let me start by asking, I guess, 3 questions. So I think the topic that we're talking about is deepening international education in seeking to deepen Canada-India relations. And I think the point that I want to make is by touching upon the issue of international education, which I think many of the earlier panelists have already spoken at length about. But I'm also interested in the nature of the deepening, because I think in thinking about deepening Canada-India relations, it's important to think about why we deepen and how we deepen. And then in doing that, we need to think about what is it so special about Canada and India in that context. So I'm not a subject matter expert in some of those areas, but I'll try my best to kind of speak to the point. So I think international education, I think it's important to realize that this is increasingly, and again, others have spoken about this, it's a global phenomenon. It's happening around the world. There are several countries that in some ways are acting as the source, and many others are acting as the sink where, you know, these flows of students are happening between them. And I think what is particularly interesting now at this current moment is that many students from several parts of Asia, including India, are moving to several other, Anglo-American, Anglophone countries, including Canada. And the issue here is what is so special about the Canada-India relation, and I'll come to that in a minute. And I think there are some interesting reasons, at least from an academic point of view, why Canada-India relations require some particular thought in thinking about it. because I think each of those countries offer very different, I mean, there are similarities, like Gary just mentioned, I think common law, as well as the participation in Commonwealth, I think does create opportunities for some modicum of collaboration. But in addition to that, I think it's important to think about the differences also. I think Canada and India are very diverse countries, but at the same time, they're also very different countries. They're different in the sense that they're at very different kinds of social economic trajectories. They're also in very different cultural kind of directions. And I think it's important to bear those in mind in thinking about it. There are also opportunities there because of those differences to think about what kinds of collaborations would be beneficial for both Canada and India. And so if you take India, it's also, at least from a sociological kind of perspective, it is a very hierarchical society. Canada, on the other hand, is a society which is relatively new, but is in some sense, at least in the academic literature, is considered as a settler colonial society. And the challenges associated with what those societies have to address are in some sense quite different. Now, when it comes to the point that I think is associated with regards to collaboration, I think one key area, and which I have participated in, is with regards to the techno-scientific domain, where there is potential and there has been quite a lot of research infrastructure that has been set in place. And I think Consul General Srivastava also alluded to this, that there are these institutes like the Shastri Indo-Canadian Institute, as well as the ICICI impacts, which have kind of forged these inter-research collaborations with regards to how technology science can be applied in order to advance mutual agendas of mutual research agendas. And I think that is a very heartening development, and I think that should be a focus increasingly about thinking about when we deepen. We should be thinking, if we're thinking primarily in the context of technology, if we're thinking about scientific development, that's an existing infrastructure that's already there, and it's something that we need to be building upon. But by building upon it and by thinking about deepening it, I think it's important to think about which direction are we going to be taking this forward in. One thing that comes to my mind in doing that, I think, is in recognizing that academics in both of these contexts are, in some sense, on a slightly different trajectory. And this is as someone who has received both Shastri Indo-Canadian Institute funding as well as IC Impacts funding. I can tell with some certainty that both of these institutions are both institutional landscapes. There are similarities, but there are also large divergences. And in thinking about setting up these kinds of research collaborations, it's also important to give some sense for academics to be able to forge those kinds of, the freedom for academics to forge those kinds of connections. And I'll give you an example of this. In the academic context in India, for example, I think there is much less openness for interdisciplinarity. I mean, this is not something that has happened off late. This is, and it's something that it's traditionally happened within the educational system in India. And so academics are much more constrained to operate within disciplinary paradigms. And in Canada, I think there is a greater kind of interest now, especially in funding agencies, to be thinking outside of these disciplinary paradigms. Now, in thinking about how to set up these collaborations, I think one thing that needs to happen is to think about how we can move beyond disciplinary paradigms in order to be able to forge the kinds of connections that are needed for academics to think about novel solutions and novel ideas in addressing mutually advantageous research directions, but also in trying to address potential problems and issues that each of these societies face. So that's one in my suggestion with regards to thinking about deepening would be to try and bring academics and a range of academics and bringing them to be thinking about questions of interdisciplinarity, transdisciplinarity. The other thing that I think is necessary in this context of this dialogue is to be thinking of the need for public-centered technological and scientific development. I think for long, a lot of the scientific development and the technological development is often guided by economic interests. And I think I'm not saying that shouldn't be the case, but I think there needs to be a broadening of trying to think about what are the kinds of infrastructures that are needed. And these infrastructures could be with regards to urban infrastructures that you and I use on a daily basis. But in thinking about these urban infrastructures, it's very easy to kind of advocate for incremental changes that contribute to the existing system without actually thinking beyond with regards to, if you want a more sustainable planet, a planet that addresses these global challenges. And now with the pandemic, I think there's an additional layer of challenges that we're thinking of. How are we going to be thinking about the systems that we need with regards to infrastructure if we are trying to put these, if we are constantly guided by the choices that we made in the past? We need to be able to think afresh and think anew about how is it that we can renew our lives in thinking and taking the environment and the planet much more seriously into the future. And then a final point, I think, and this is something that increasingly in Canada and in the US, there are a lot of researchers who are increasingly very committed to is how research can contribute to the least empowered and the most marginalized in society. So in addressing, and that's true in the Canadian context of the indigenous populations, but also of India in context of several socially marginalized groups, and how research can address the needs of these marginalized individuals. And I think that's something that as academics, we have an obligation to attend to, and hopefully in the context of these deliberations, we can talk more about this, but we can come to some kind of an understanding that, these are some important criteria to keep in mind also. Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Govind, for your enlightening remarks and also bringing research, the focus of research in deepening relations between Canada and India. And I completely agree with you with the differences in the education system. There are those differences which academicians like you can build the bridges and have those innovative programs, and with IC Impact and Shastri on the forefront of Canada-India corridor. So once again, thank you so much for your remark. At this time, I will invite my colleague Suchit Ahuja to introduce Sandeep Goel, President and CEO of ICICI Bank.
Thanks, Prashant. It's my privilege to introduce Sandeep Goyle, who's the President and CEO of ICICI Bank Canada. Sandeep Goyle is the President and CEO of ICICI Bank Canada since July 2019. In his role, he's responsible for leading the growth of the bank in the Canadian marketplace. Previously, Mr. Goyle was the Chief Risk Officer for the North American operations of ICICI, overseeing all areas of risk management and regulatory relationships in both the United States and Canada. Before joining ICICI in North America, Mr. Goyle was a core member of the transformational risk team at ICICI Bank UK, based in London. Mr. Goel has also previously held a key position in the bank's relationship team in New Delhi. Prior to joining ICICI Group, Mr. Goel worked on critical software and hardware automation projects with the Indian Railways based in various cities in India. Mr. Goel graduated from Delhi University with honors in engineering and holds an MBA from the Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore. Thank you so much, Sandeep, for joining us. It's a great honor and privilege, and we look forward to hearing your comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Suchit. Thanks a lot. For record, greetings to Honorable CGI, Toronto, Apoorva ji, my fellow panelists, David, Gary, and Govind, organizer and moderator, Vipul and Prashant, and to all attendees who are attending this discussion on various formats. So I'm pleased to present my thoughts on the Canada-India Education Forum related to this critical chain of relationships between these two countries. And Indian students in Canada are, very vital to both countries in multiple ways. So I would like to share a presentation because then it will be more comprehensive view. Let's see if I can share.
Sure.
There's a lot of echo.
Hi, I request all the panelists to mute yourselves, please.
I think we are better now. Okay, so I'll just share a presentation. I assume it is visible to all people. Is it visible?
Yes, Sandeep, it is visible. Please go ahead.
Okay. Okay. So in terms of, we have compiled certain statistics in terms of internationalization of education in Canada. Universities and colleges contribute roughly around $40 billion to the economic prosperity across coast to coast in Canada, and give employment to roughly around 350,000 people. And out of which international students are increasingly contributing to a fair share, 25 billion annually is being contributed either through direct contributions as fee payments or living expenses in local geographies and other tertiary employment opportunities. So 200,000 jobs are created through international students who are coming into Canada. And as I think most of you mentioned, India is now overtaken China in terms of gross number of students who are there within the Canadian education space. And India-Canada education corridor has grown over the past decade. Almost 120,000, 125,000 plus students per year are coming, and this is growing very fast. Given this gap year, I'm sure the kind of students who are waiting in India to get their visas and to travel, this number is going to jump in a big way. And they are a big contributor. I think David also mentioned in terms of the kind of ecosystem which is there on colleges campuses. Because of these students, they contribute in various forms, both cultural, spiritual, educational. So there is a lot of things which are important, and most of these students, they remain in Canada, so they continue to contribute to this solid partnership between these two countries. And increasingly, why Canada is being chosen, quality of Canadian education system is very much comparable to what our US counterparts present. Very good branding of Canadian education has been done by both federal and provincial governments. Great work has been done in terms of making Canadian education as a flag bearer of international education in India. And it's a reputation as a very safe country liberal immigration policies, PR assignment within 3 years, lower cost of living. So there are a lot of pluses which go for Canada. But I must tell you, since we are an international bank, we are seeing a lot of flows which are going into UK, Germany. Europe is competing in a big way, and Australia, New Zealand. So as I think Gary mentioned, we need to continue to work to make Canada as a preferred destination for Indian students, because there is a lot of competition which is going to come. Importance of international students, I think most of you have already mentioned. Growth in enrollments and driven solely by international students, higher fees. International students select programs that benefit the longevity in Canada because they are looking for employment, settlement within Canada. They bring in social and cultural diversity to campuses. And like those programs where international students are opting to enroll are actually showing much larger increase in enrollments. In terms of I wanted to bring this aspect also in terms of how government funding to colleges and universities have shrunk over a period of last 30-40 years. And most of this government funding has been replaced by international students' fees. So this is something which is economically very tied up. We need to make sure that we continue to remain competitive in the international space. We have also deliberated internally in terms of what all things we need to do to have a very comprehensive package going forward from a Canadian educational landscape. New education policy of India offers a lot of co-creation opportunities in India, a lot of exchange programs or creation of campuses in India for Canadian schools and colleges. And I have been in discussion with a lot of colleges who are thinking of putting their feet on ground in India. There are a lot of universities. I think Honorable CJ also mentioned India Chair. I think a lot of colleges, universities should dip into that thought, creating India Chair, creating India think tank to basically gravitate towards a long-term strategy on how do we address this competition which is coming. And we need to continue to innovate with students-driven events and conferences. I think a lot of great work has been done. Seneca has been doing a lot of good work in terms of arranging webinars, online events where a lot of students can participate, parents can participate. And we need to continuously influence stakeholders and policymakers to remove any frictional points, any things which are knots in this relationship. Whatever is there, I think we need to continue to work. And we need to support student-focused initiatives and ecosystems. And I'll just explain in terms of where all we are involved in this ecosystem. So we have a full range of products for the banking ecosystem for students, starting in India with education loans. We have full remittance fee programs. We have accounts which are opened while the student is still in India. They can fund the account in Canada. We are looking at scholarships, internships, guest lectures, and advisor for India in terms of giving that extended arm to universities and colleges into India. As I told you, we cover the entire range of things from educational ecosystem point of view. We are providing internships to university students to visit India, though I think it has been interrupted because of COVID. But still, I think our intent is to provide a window into India to students who are studying here in many colleges and universities. We are providing marketing and business program internships within Canada or within ICICI Group across. We are hosting joint webinars to basically market Canadian universities and colleges to global high net worth individual customers of the bank. We are also partnering with ICICI Bank to reach target audience in India, because India is a big market, diversified market, a lot of competition among colleges and universities within Canada. We have special offers on student loan pricing, because we want to enable students who are coming in from India so that they are not constrained from financial side to attend a leading college or university here. We are also looking at a lot of tie-ups with NGOs who are working for student well-being in Canada. Some of them are in the works, but we are looking holistically to make sure that students come here and they are comforted, and the bank is providing a helping hand for their settlement. So that's all from my side. Any questions, queries, definitely I'll be able to take care of it.
Thank you so much, Sandeep, for your presentation. And I know we have Unifee services from ICICI Bank for students to remit their tuition. That has actually streamlined a lot of fee payment, and even in situations like refund of international students at Seneca. So thank you for your presentation. With this, we have ended the remark section of the webinar, and now we can move on to a Q&A session where I will ask questions with each panelist, and then they can answer. And if others want to speak, they can join in. So my first question is to David Agnew. David, how do you see international students, especially from India, contributing to the Canadian economy and to the education sector in particular?
Well, I'll try to be original because I think I covered some of that in my my earlier remarks. But I mean, I do want to pick up on a couple of things. One is, and I was pleased to hear Sandeep pick up on it as well. We have a disproportionate involvement of our Indian students in campus life, and it's so encouraging, because I know that there's a view out there that there's this kind of sterile, come to Canadian post-secondary institution. It's all about the postgraduate work permit, and you kind of mail it in to on the school part. Not at all. It's a lot of the leadership of our student federation is our Indian students. Our mentoring program, which matches senior students with incoming students, is very, very heavily subscribed by Indian students on both scores. Our clubs are active. Our leadership program that our student services run. So it's really encouraging. And then I think these are, of course, I mean, we pride ourselves on not just preparing people who are ready for the job market, but also, citizens, not capital C citizens, but citizens in the true sense of the word, who are ready to make contributions to their community. And I think that very much fits the profile of our students who come to us from India. The other thing is just to pick up on the potential of more sort of partnerships and more activity in India. And I know that one of the things that we've been involved in discussions with the Indian government, going back to the National Skills Development Corporation and so on, is the whole transfer of some of the things that I think Canadian institutions do well, which is the whole skills preparation. And that's one area where I think there could be some continuing transferring and sharing of experience and things that we could bring to the table, because the Canadian college system has been around for more than 50 years, and it's very practiced in now a very increasing range of sophisticated skills that as the Indian economy continues to grow and expand in very exciting ways, could be very helpful. And I think those are discussions that might, with the new regime in India of the education system, that might be an opportunity to restart and open up a whole new track of Canada-India cooperation and collaboration.
Thank you, David, for your remarks. And I think it synergizes with the concept what we talk about, brain drain, and this can be a brain chain between Canada-India corridor. So thank you. My next question is for Gary. Gary, how do you see education sector in particular helping Canada-India closer? At many of these students, they end up working in Canada and also becoming permanent residents and citizens of Canada.
Well, thank you, Prashant. I want to echo what David was saying about the leadership. As I look at the leaders of the student council at Brock University, when I look at the board members that are chosen to go on the board as trustees, I must admit, as I kind of look back, the vast majority of these individuals were international students. So you have to kind of say to yourself, gee, that's surprising, but probably not. In many respects, the people that choose to come to Canada are kind of the best and the brightest. Just kind of think of it. The effort that it takes to come sometimes halfway around the world to reestablish yourself without family, often with no friends whatsoever. I remember when Kaveri Bhattacharya was starting at Brock University. This is a decade or more ago. And her first day, she, the only person, well, Kaveri knew no one in Canada, zero. Now, her dad knew a few people, but she knew no one. And just the complete daunting experience of it. And I remember taking her on the campus and walking around where and realizing just, kind of how, this was a major, kind of commitment for her, and taking her down to my mother-in-law's house to say, now this is your home base of safety. So first of all, you got to recognize that these individuals that choose to come to Canada, I believe, are often have substantial credentials. When they get here also, they're not afraid to participate. And I think that's very, very important. Now, where it's up to Canada is, I kind of use the reference pain points. That there are times where you have stories where, students, and I know we have accommodations of getting visa, and it all seems very simple and easy, and it just happens. And then there are other times where it's not quite that simple and easy, and there's complications and everything else. So I believe that we need to eliminate all those pain points if we can, because having those particular students stay in Canada, get work experience in Canada, is so important. Now, whether it is they've come to a college and they've acquired a skill, maybe they want more advanced education as they go along. All right, that's their choice. Maybe they don't. But I truly believe that these students that we are attracting are tremendous contributors to the economic and social growth of Canada. I remember a couple of years ago reading an article where saying that the kind of the social economic makeup and visible makeup of Toronto had changed radically. All right, where in many respects, individuals like me is a minority, and I must admit I smiled and I almost had a bit of a sense of pride of saying that's Canada. That we cannot succeed without immigration, and we cannot succeed without immigration being part of our fabric and being part of our leadership. And I think, as David said, these young individuals, they want to contribute. They want to be the future leaders. You look at our political structure, you see more and more, people of color and different nationalities running for office. And this is terrific. And it's the educational system in Canada, I think, is the incubator for this. And we have a real responsibility to make it happen.
Thank you, Gary, and very nicely summarized, and again, it gives us that thought that the Canadian values of multiculturalism, and in immigration minister's own word during pandemic, that international students, their contribution is permanent. They are welcome to live in Canada for a longer period of time. So thank you so much. Now I will move to Professor Govind Gopakumar. Professor, can you please share what has worked at your institution with the government's approval on remote studies to be equivalent to in-country studies, and how has been the experience of Indian students pertaining to the time difference between Canada and India?
Thank you, Prashant, for that question. It's a bit of a detailed question. I'm a bit unprepared to answer it completely, but yes, I think this is an ongoing challenge. Although I'm chair of my department, I'm not involved in the senior level administration, so I am not going to be speaking for the administration of Concordia University. But I do know, as an engaged faculty member, I do know that the university has been involved in in several efforts to accommodate international students, including the ones from India, in entry-level students as well as continuing students, in accommodating their particular needs in this context of the pandemic. The one thing that we are reassured in the university, and maybe the students aren't, but at least faculty members are reassured, is that the university and the province is moving in the direction of gradual opening. And what that would mean potentially is that graduate students and our undergraduate students will have the option to return to campus and have some activities happening in person, and that will certainly I guess enhance or enrich their learning experience. But there are challenges associated with it, and one of the things that we have tried as part of our accommodations for international students is to, with regards to continuing paying them for the work that they're doing even when they're not here. And some of our newer students, I believe there is an arrangement that allows for some kind of payment to happen, which they will be able to encash once they come to Canada. But again, these are details that administrators, more senior administrators, would have a much better grip on. I'm quite a low member in that cog, so I can't say I do know all the exact details. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Govind. And we understand your constraints, but we feel like the response we are seeing in the sector for online education is welcoming. Students are looking forward for their continuity of education, and although with the difference of time zone, we see that they are continuing with their education plans. So thank you for sharing your insights. Now I will move to Sandeep Goyle. This is the last question, and then Vipul will give his concluding remarks. So Sandeep, what do you feel like about international students, especially from India? They are contributing a great deal to Canadian economy. As a bank, which works very proactively on Canada-India relations. What has been your experience, and tell us a bit of kind of support and assistance you provide to students both in India and also after arriving in Canada?
So we call it a student life cycle, Prashant. Thanks for asking this. So we work a lot in terms of making sure that this journey where we get attached to the student and the family, because in India, two most important things which are high priority for all parents is education and marriage of kids. So this is the two things which trouble them the most when they are sleeping in the night. So we basically go to them and tell them that, see, marriage we can't take care of, but education, please leave it to us. So we engage with parents at that level, and there is a lot of hand-holding which is done in India, because it is not a very simple decision. It's a very family-based decision, though I think kids are deciding more nowadays on their own. So we get involved at a very initial stage with the parents and students. And we offer a full range of services in India in terms of deciding which university to go to. There is a set of consultants, advisors who get into play. And this advisory framework also is they are very elite advisors who are like well educated from Harvard, Columbia, Ivy School. And it's a big business in India who advise. So we get involved at that stage. And that is where I think the private wealth management part of our bank gets involved. And then we help the students in finalizing what is the financial plan, how do you want to support the education, through loan, through equity support, or you want to put money upfront inside the bank. So, and then what remittance platform to use. There are multiple choices available today. So that is how we assist them while they are still in India. And once they land here, then in terms of hand-holding, once they join campus, we are working with a lot of NGOs to make sure they are heard, their grievances are heard in case they're dissatisfied. It's a home away from home. It's a cold country. India is not so much cold. So a lot of students fight that battle with weather and People need family support here. So we are like family. I think Seneca also has a lot of support mechanisms within the campus. We assist them because a lot of these students come to our branches. They talk to us, talk to our FSOs in terms of what all challenges they are facing. And then we are working with a lot of employment groups who tie up these students with the large, small, medium corporates for their internships, because that is very critical, because many of these students are actually coming from financially challenged sections of India, and they want to earn and send money back to India. So we want to give them gainful employment. We are working with a lot of agencies here in Canada. We are tying up at a big scale to give them gainful employment. So that's the kind of thing we have in mind. We continue to evolve as I think this ecosystem evolves, and we continue to work with this segment.
Thank you, Sandeep, and definitely I come from India. Naga comes from India. We have Suchet, others. We feel yes, education and marriage, these are the two critical points in our life, and of course, the student life cycle is an important aspect of how we see the journey of international students they take, and the decisions are taken in consultations with the family. So thank you for all the services which ICICI Bank provides to students in India and also when they come here. With this, I think we are on time to conclude, and I would like to invite Vipul Jani, President and founder of Canada, India, USA Development Forum, to give a vote of thanks and his concluding remarks.
Sure. Thank you, Prashantji. Before the closing remarks, actually, Sandeep, you just said about education and marriage, right? So on a funny note, people study, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, get their PhDs and whatnot. Then they get married, and then they realize that they know nothing. Every day you realize that you have to start all over again.
No, but that is not unique to India, Vipul. That is true all over the world. Huh?
Exactly. So anyway, before my closing remarks, after hearing all these fantastic speeches and presentations, Prashanti, one of the advantages of being a president is that you can take a little liberty. And I would just like to throw in one quick question, which anybody can answer. All the speakers, feel free to come in. It's actually one question with 3 different parts to it. Trying to get squeeze in as much as I can. With the new education policy in India that the CG mentioned, that Sandeep mentioned, yes, we have talked about foreign Canadian educational institutions maybe setting up campuses in India. But what I am interested in knowing is actually some work being done, or is it still just at the consideration level? Has any institution taken the initiative of going beyond any MOUs, of actually setting up shop, to put it that way? And how will that work in terms of the fees? Because when an Indian student comes to Canada, he pays much more. Now, if he is taking the same course from the same institution, living in Canada, will he be paying the same fees? So is this a good deal for the Canadian institutions, or is it a win-lose? And the last part is the fast tracking of the permanent residency for international students right now in the current pandemic environment. Do we think that is something that should be made permanent?
So, Vipul, I'll just start on this particular thing which you raised in terms of new education policy. I'm aware of 2 institutions who are actually looking for real estate in India at this time. I can't name them, but I am aware of 2 institutions, and these are big, who are looking for real estate to set up campuses in India. So that is one. Second, I think on this fee issue, I think the cost of operating a setup or a college in India is, I think, 20% or 30% of what you will have in Canada. So even if you charge a fees, which is, it can be agnostic to Canada or India, but I think institution will gain in any form and manner if you have a local presence in India.
Anyone else want to comment? David, Gary?
Vipul, if I may, I'll just say, when I look at a number of mid-sized universities, and I would put Brock as one of the mid-sized comprehensive universities, a great deal of attention over the last 10 or 20 years has been spent on China. The number of Chinese students, our international center, everything on campus. My sense is that there was a decided weighting towards China. Why? They're just seeing, remember that natural river I talked with? It was easy for Chinese students to come to Canada. And when that was happening, I don't think there was quite the program at some universities, and I will say Brock is one of them, regarding attracting as many students from India as maybe we could or should have. That's changing. I think that it's clearly, if anybody really understands the demographics and what's happening in post-secondary education, there is going to be increased competition amongst universities, particularly mid-sized comprehensive universities, to get students. With that being said, India is emerging, has emerged, should emerge as a primary market for new students. And I think with some of these institutions, what you need to do is establish a working relationship, a knowledge, a flow of students, I think, before you go on campus and you start looking at real estate. Those universities that are looking, or colleges that are looking at real estate now, they've been doing business in India and have had relationships for a while. As we all know, doing business in India is not easy, but it can be very, very, very rewarding. But it does take time. So I think that the universities and colleges have to go through the process of creating a flow and then creating a real deep strategy, which could include campuses on board. Now, as far as the tuition is concerned, Vipul, the reality is that there's a tuition freeze on the university level. Right now, there was even a 10% cut in tuition last year, just a while ago. So it is artificially deflated. So what international students are paying is, quite honestly, a more competitive rate. And I think what Canada has to do regarding that rate is compete with the world, not compete with domestic students. And I think that's the approach most universities will take. I'll leave it to David and others to comment on the colleges.
Yeah, just very briefly. I mean, Seneca is now one of those that's looking for real estate. We're a public institution, as the universities are essentially public institutions, all created by acts of the Parliament, and we have to be very mindful of our resources, and we don't have speculative dollars. So you have to approach these things very carefully. And there is a history, not necessarily in India, but there is a history of institutions going into other countries and not necessarily flourishing. So you have to be very careful about what's the real purpose? And as much as we're public institutions and nonprofit institutions, what's the business plan, and what's the business proposition, and what's the advantage of doing that rather than continuing in a partnership model, which many of us have? Is it meant to be a feeder school? So you set up a campus in India and then hope the students then finish their studies or come to Canada for a different level of studies, or is it something more organic than that? So it's something that we're always looking at new opportunities, but not something we're down the road of. Tuition fees, I won't comment. I mean, obviously, you're looking to there's two things: you have to cover your costs. You also have to be attentive to the local market, so you have to be very careful not to price yourself out of the market by swaggering in there with unrealistic tuition fees. On your last question, I mean, I think there's further reforms. I was actually encouraged to hear the immigration minister talk about the need to take our immigration system and even our visa system kind of out of the last century and bring it into the modern. Look, delightfully, there is a broad political consensus in Canada that says our future depends on a healthy immigration system. And here we have, I'll repeat it again, I can't think of a better group to welcome with open arms than a Canadian educated group of young people who've come to Canadian institutions And I think we could make this process a lot smoother and a lot less, I can tell you, since we just went through it at the end of our April semester, a lot less anxiety producing for our poor students who are trying to make a new future.
Could I jump in? I know we are very close to the time, but I just wanted to kind of follow up on the point that Gary made in thinking about a deep strategy for education in this context of this new education policy. I think there needs to be some thought about the nature of the education that if Canadian universities are going to take this very seriously and set up shop in India, I think there needs to be a lot of thought about the kind of education that's being offered, because I think it would be a mistake if Canadian universities were just to repackage, very cosmetically repackage their education and then just drop it in the Indian context. And I think what Canadian universities need to be thinking about in terms of the professional course offerings or their other non-professional course offerings, if there are going to be any, is how is it going to be received within the Indian context? And I think it's a very different matter for international students to travel to Canada and to be faced with the choices they have and accept those choices as a given. But it's going to be very different when Canadian universities are going to be rubbing shoulders with other Indian universities and offering programs that may be appropriate in the Canadian context, but in the Indian context, I think they may be quite different. And so in thinking about the nature of those programs, what will be very good and what is appropriate, I think there's a question of what is needed in the Indian context, but also what is the Canadian educational experience going to bring into the educational system there. And so I think it's a very dynamic thing, and hopefully there would be a wider kind of consultation around the content that's going to be offered with regards to the nature of the courses, who it's targeted for. Is it just, as some have said, is it going to be an immigration pass, or do we need to provide an education system that is in some sense tailored for real global challenges that we all face in this world? So I think there needs to be some thinking, and I think this is very new at this point, and so none of us have a clear sense of how this is going to evolve, either at the Indian side or in the Canadian side. But I think I would argue that there needs to be a lot more thought in there.
Well, so what a fantastic opening session, I would say, for our Canada-India Education Forum. Thank you to all our speakers today. Unfortunately, Mr. Brock Dykeman could not join us today. Hopefully, he can join us next time. So thank you again, as I said, all the speakers for sharing your knowledge and your wisdom. Today's episode will now be posted as an edited YouTube video on Canada-India Insight YouTube channel and all our Facebook pages, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on the Canada-India USA Development Forum website. Thank you once again to our Education Committee members, Suchita Ahuja, Nagasarat Pandurangi, Jatinder Banwit, and Prashant Ji. Prashant Ji for moderating it as well, and Nagasarat for helping us with the tech support. The second session will now be on June 24, and we'll reach out to you for that. If you can help us connect to other leaders in the education sector, we'll greatly appreciate that, because we want to reach out to as many institutions as we can in both countries to bring both the countries together through education. So with that, the session is now formally closed. Thank you.